So welcome everyone to this week's feature spotlight, where we're going to talk about how you can use data in order to improve and grow your business. I see that we have some people joining, but we're going to get started immediately. And if we haven't met before, so my name is John Hallberg. I'm responsible for content at Mangomint as well as at the salonbusiness.com. And what I will be focusing on today, really, and what I want to get out of this session is to show you how you can read the reports and the data that you have available to you inside of Mangomint. So I hope you can hear me okay. Just give me a yes in the chat, just so I know that I'm coming through all right. Awesome, Robin. Perfect. Hey, Cassie. So I'm going to bring up a presentation that I will take you through. So you should be seeing that. I'm just moving that over here, juggling the screens. So this is a topic that I'm really passionate about myself, because if you're grounded in data, that can make a massive difference for your business. And as a business owner, you make so many decisions every day, and decisions that leads to action, hopefully in the direction that you want, right? And as we make any decision, there's really two parts that goes into that. It typically starts with some type of thought that you have about something that you want to be different, and an emotion attached to that thought. And it's that emotion that gives energy to move from a thought into an action. And typically this is kind of the context that we operate our decision making in, right? We have a thought about something, an idea, and the emotion attached to that will judge how are we going to move and how we're going to go and implement that. The problem with this, though, is that our thoughts are not always rational. So our thoughts are based on our past experience, our lens of viewing the world, which is not always accurate, right? So we might think that clients are spending as much as they should at each appointment, where that might not be true. Or we might think that we have a team member who is doing a really good job of rebooking their clients after the visit, and whether that is true or not, sometimes we just believe that, right? It's just from few experiences that we have seen, and it might not be fully grounded. And if we don't see that, then we might not see that there's an opportunity that we could do something, and that will not spark that emotion to actually go do anything, and we will just stay where we are. So what I want to do today is really to add one more dimension to this little formula for how we make decision, which is the facts. So facts are the hard data. Facts is non-arguable. It's how much money you have in your bank, how many clients do you have in your business, how many of your new clients are actually coming back for a second appointment, what clients are spending with us, etc., etc. That's all facts. That's all data. And being armed with that, and as we're going to do today, go a little bit deeper on that, being educated with that information will help you have better thoughts about what's going to be done, that will fuel a different energy for the type of action that you take, which hopefully will be more of the right action than if you weren't fully grounded in data. And facts are also important because if you work with a team, being able to share facts is also very helpful, because it shows your team how they're doing on the things that you're measuring and that are important to you. And it does that in a way that is also detached from emotion and from subjective opinions, right? So by sharing data, you're able to communicate, how the team is performing and the direction we want to go in, with just facts, right? And there can always be arguments around why that number or why that, specific thing that we're looking at is what it is, which is, could be good arguments or not, but a fact is a fact, and it can be really helpful to also share that with your team. So this is really both for your decision making as well as to drive your team, what we're going to focus on today. So this is the agenda that I'm going to lead you through. So we're already 5 minutes in. I was kind of hoping to be able to do this one in 20 minutes. Let's see. Where I will be spending most of the time today is on how you can read business insight reports and how you can like pull insights that will drive action from these reports. So I'm actually going to spend the majority of time there, and then we're going to pop over also into Mangomint just so I can show you more of the reports that are available and just give you some tips and tricks as well on how you can use that. That will be a little bit briefer before we move to a Q&A. I hope that sounds okay. Yes. Okay. So let's get started. Let's dive straight in. So the first report, business insight report that I want to, or business intelligence report, focus on is appointments. So you'll find this, as you can see on the screenshot there, inside of Mangomint at the end of the reports, and I'll show you later on as well, like where to find that inside of the app. But this is where you find the appointment reports, which is really has everything to do with appointments. Makes sense, right? So you want to look at things like productivity, how booked we are, also like around clients that are most loyal and so on. So everything that goes around appointments. So let's start there. And this is what reports looks like when you were to pull that inside Mangomint. And let's just go through the presentation now. And I should also say maybe if you have a pen and paper to take some notes, do that as well, so that after this you can go check your own data. If you know what you're hearing today gives you some ideas. But let me walk you through this and just zoom in on a few different data points here, and just walk you through how I would read that data. So the first column here is essentially showing out of all the available hours. So we can both look at the total line, right, which is for the total business, or we can look at each individual staff member here. But what this column shows you is out of all the available hours that a staff member has, or that we have in total on the business, how many of them are booked. So essentially our productivity. And you will see how that can vary a little bit across different employees. This business that we're looking at here has a very high productivity, I would say. So it's about 90%. Typically what we would say is a good target here is around 80%. So, and the reason I say that and not necessarily 100 is also if you start to get above 80%, it typically means that it becomes more difficult for clients to be able to find the time with you when they want to book. Good that we have the waitlist feature inside of Mangomint to help you manage that. But typically, if we're in the range here of 91% productivity, we probably should be looking at, can we increase our capacity? Is it time to hire? But yeah, so that's roughly the productivity. And what you'll see here as well, if we look at some different numbers, so I'm just using some demo data here, right? Obviously, this can vary between employees. You could also see, in the case of Lisa here, that it's actually above 100%. So how is that possible? And that would be if you run a business where you have services that offer a service duration time, so you can actually be double booked, during those services. That could be one factor that really plays into why you could actually go even above 100. So also when you look at that data, and I would say generally what I'm sharing today, I'm going to give you some benchmark numbers, some target numbers. All of these numbers, you will need to think about. How that really is relevant in your business, depending on the type of services that you offer, and maybe you have more of those double bookings, and therefore you should have a higher productivity rate, for example, right? So bear that in mind. The numbers is more directional. I'm just looking at the chat here as well, and we're getting a question on if staff breaks and lunchtime count toward their availability. So in this particular, in this report actually, and I can show you later on. So when you run that, you can choose. So by default, it basically doesn't count blocked time. So when you run this report by default, it doesn't. So if you have lunch breaks and so on, that will be taken out of the available time. And we're only looking at the available time. But like when you run the report, you can also, toggle on if you want even block time to count as available time. But yeah, default is that lunch breaks and so on wouldn't be available time. The next number I want to zoom in on is like requested rates. So you will have appointments. You can see how this is actually split. So you have appointments for all clients and appointment for new clients to the right. So the requested rate for appointment is basically like when someone books that appointment, if they are requesting a specific service provider, a specific stylist for their appointment, and how many, how many percent of the cases have they requested that specific stylist or service provider when they booked. So this is kind of like, the way I would look at this number is also like a loyalty indicator to that specific person, right? If they have clients that are really like making sure they want to book with them every time, or if people are just booking and then randomly being selected, that member of staff. So it's kind of an indicator of how loyal their clientele is. If we zoom in on walk-ins, so obviously this is kind of like if we look at this particular business here, you can see that is a very low percent. It's like just a few exceptions where people actually booked for a walk-in. So this business here clearly works with appointments only, and there's only a few exceptions to that. But you might be working with a mix of appointments and so on. So this measure is good to look at, because if you have more of these walk-in appointments, that's a signal that the business is more short-term than if you have appointments booked in advance. And if you're trying to kind of progress to get more appointments versus walk-ins, that's a good number for you to keep track of. Then we have pre-bookings, which I think is a great number, which is very actionable as well. When you look at this report. So what this means is basically when someone had an appointment in your business, like within 24 hours after that appointment, did they book in for another one? Okay, so we can see here like 47% or 48% of all appointments in this business, 24 hours after they had been booked in for another one. And where this becomes interesting is, of course, when we break that down on individual service providers, because we all know for a fact that if we pre-book clients in advance, that will help us, improve loyalty. It's will help us get clients in sooner than when they discover later that they needed to go to us. So we include both frequency and loyalty. So it's an important activity to have, right? So this could be something that is like one of these data points that I think is good to share also like with team members, and a measure that is important to drive in your business. So yeah, that is essentially what that shows, how many are booked in within 24 hours. So essentially being pre-booked directly after the appointment. The last number I wanted to share in the appointments report as well is new clients requested rate. So similar when we looked at existing clients or all clients, we could see like which service provider have a more loyal clientele because they keep booking them specifically. What this one does is really looking at new clients. So it's a signal for you of like who in your team is bringing in more new clients or bringing in new business, right? Because they book for the first time and they are selecting them specifically. So whatever they're doing, if that's through word of mouth that they're delivering, good service to their existing clients that talk to other, or if they're active on social and you're using whatever marketing or like how they're doing to bring in clients, this is kind of where you will see that. And I think this becomes particularly interesting if you have booth renters in your business as well, in kind of discussions with them in terms of how you're providing value to them. So if you can see here that they're not really bringing in their own clients, but you're the one who are giving them new clients basically through the marketing that you're doing in the business. That could be a good data point to have when you talk to booth renters or members of staff in general. So yes, that is, I think, like walk-ins for new clients or pre-bookings, we can of course look at that as well. But I think those were the like key things in the appointment report that I think are important points for you to be aware of. So what I want to do is just like take a moment as well as we cover that, just for you to think of like maybe some things that I covered today that you aren't really looking at. Maybe you should do something about that, and maybe like just take a note so that after this you can go and look at your data and come up with like activities or actions that you could take to further improve your business. So I'm getting some questions here as well from Cassie. Do recurring appointments count as a pre-booking? Yes, if they have a recurring, that would be my assumption. Yes, that it's on the calendar and it's booked in advance, so that would be a pre-booking. How does the system know if it's a walk-in? So obviously we're managing both the bookings in the same platform as when we're just taking a client on the spot to provide a service. So we will have that data there to be able to see this person just coming for a walk-in, or was it something that we already had booked in the system in advance. Right, so that was the appointments report. Wanted to go into the sales report as well, which can help us see just, are we missing some opportunities here to increase sales? So you'll find that also in the business section on the business intelligence sales. This one is a little bit easier, or like there's a fewer data points in here to look at. So just like cover them briefly. So one that you can look at as the business owner would be the bottom line, right? Where you see basically product sales versus service sales and how that is making up, like, so you can basically see like what share of your business is coming from retail products versus service. And there's no like specific target here, I would say, because how much product you're selling versus service really depends on your business model, how your business is set up, how big of like you want to make retail. In this case, it would be about 14%, which actually happens to be like what I know the US average when it comes to share of retail in a hair salon business would be that data. But what that number is for you is going to be individual depending on your business model and how you want to run that. So but it's a way for you to keep track on can you do more there? Do you see that you have more opportunity? And I think one column that is interesting to look at is more on staff level to see how many products are we selling at each appointment. And we can track that for different individuals, which you can see in this case is kind of scattered across everywhere. I do expect here like Tom would probably be like not a service provider because he doesn't have any service sales, but sells a lot of product. But generally, they're quite different, right? So this is also an opportunity, like if selling retail and adding that to appointments is important for you. This is a very like actionable number also to share with your team and to kind of either incentivize or just have as a number that we look at together and maybe have a target for in terms of how much product we want to sell at each appointment. But again, really depends on like your business and how you want to play that. But that is a like good and actionable measure that individuals in your team could easily influence. So that was the sales report. Just pausing quickly if there's any thoughts coming up here. Like, are you working with some of that already? Or maybe you're seeing some opportunities to like, this is what I could do differently after this webinar today. So like just make some notes of that and you can, look at your data later to see what could we do different as we get back in the business. Cool. The next report that I want to cover is client retention. So naturally, when we run a service-based business, client retention is really important, right? It doesn't really matter how much we invest and spend on marketing towards new clients unless we're keeping the clients that we get, or a big part of them. It's very difficult to build a profitable business in otherwise, right? So that is what we use the client retention report for. And this is what it looks like. And what I would say, like when looking at the client retention report, this really only makes sense to do this after some time. So you would look at, an earlier period, because, in order to know if a client that has been retained and if they have booked in and come in again for an appointment, you need to allow a little bit of time to pass for that to happen. So what you can look at here would be basically, existing clients for each service provider. You can look at total here as well. And you can choose like which number is most relevant for your business. Do you want to look at this on a 90-day basis, meaning that they've had an appointment and then have they booked in for another one within 90 days, So that could be one number that you look at. Or you can say, in my business, the way we operate and the time in between visits, it's longer than that. It really depends on what type of service you provide. So then it might be the 180-day number that you look at. And generally, when we look at client retention, like the target that I would like to see is that we're getting this above 80%. If we're going below 80%, I think here, if we're looking, it's like 77, it's okay, if that's okay. But if we start to see that we're going below 80%, it probably means that we have some type of issue somewhere, right? So having that in mind, I think 80% is generally for most businesses a good number to go after when it comes to retaining existing clients, I would say. So these are, and when I say existing clients, that means that they've had one appointment at some point in the past, and they're coming in for an appointment, and then do they book in again after 90 days? So they're an existing clients that we want to see at around 80%. We can also look at the new clients. So basically the same setup in terms of how we look at the data. Whereas it's going to be lower naturally, right? And it really also depends. I don't really want to even call out the target here, even if I kind of like generally most businesses would be, want to see that above 40% above 40%, ideally 50% under normal circumstances. But if you're a business that is located in, for example, a touristy area, right, where there's a lot of visitors who are just there for short stays and then leave and that kind of thing, you will have a much lower number, right? So it really depends on where your business is set up, and you will need to figure out what would be a realistic target, or what do I want to look at for my particular business. So that would be the client retention report. Naturally, very important data when you run the type of business that you do, which is most likely a salon or spa. Keeping clients is crucial. So I'm just looking at the chat here as well, and I see, do clients have to come back to the same staff member in order to count towards retention? So no. So it's basically as long as they book in with any member of staff. So it doesn't need to be with the same member. Thanks. Okay. So I think just as we move into action on this, I think just making sure that your team is aware will help. I've seen also businesses who actually use retention rate as part of the compensation model. There's always, right? But it's a very important number, and something that you really want to make sure that you're on top of and kind of have defined what your targets are, so that you have something to track against and work against. So that was basically 3 business intelligence reports, so that we use to gain these kind of insights that can help us run and grow our business. There are many more reports available inside of Mangomint. Mangomint are 30 more reports. I think there's roughly 33 in total. So I thought I would just pop over quickly into the tool, and I see we're already 25 minutes in. So let me just actually, I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to share something else with you instead. So I'll just go and just hop into the Mangomint app. So I hope that's coming up for you. So I just want to kind of show you where you can find reports, which other reports are available real quick, and just give you a few tips as well on how you can work here. So you'll find reports. You have a reports tab at the top, and if you're a user of Mangomint, you're probably quite familiar where that is. So you just click on that, and here we'll see, all the reports. As I said, at the end here is where we find, for example, the business intelligence report, reports that we just look at. So that will be here towards the end. And you can set, what time period you want to look at. So if you want to look at the appointments report and we want to look at this week only, and this is what the question was, right? If we want to include block time as available time or not. So by default, this is toggle off, but you could toggle that on as well. And you can select for which staff member do you want to see that, and just generate that report. So that's basically where you access the intelligence report. And you'll have reports in here for inventory. So I'm not going to go into all of them because this would be a really long session. And I believe some of them are more straightforward, more like reporting on, what's the level of your inventory. Payments, you can get a summary of with different payments types for a certain time period. How much are you processing using the different payment types? If we go into, if you have memberships and packages, you'll find places for how you can track that as well. Gift cards, if you're using gift cards and you want to see how many outstanding gift cards do I have, you can just pull a report on the, your current balance on that. You have the sales report, so you can get a report of service sales, product sales. But just to show you a little bit on the features in terms of when you run the reports. So let's go to payroll. I think that's a report that is quite commonly used. So if you want to run a payroll report, you would just select the time period. So let's, in this case, just do this week. And this is a demo account I'm in right now as well, so I don't have a ton of data. You would select for who do you want to run. For who do you want to run this report? And you obviously can set a specific month, probably be the more common use case. And you'll generate that. And so you'll get an overview here then for basically each member of staff in this list, and also your total report. And what can be really helpful as well, so you basically get everything here. You get revenue, service sales, commission, tips, everything you would need to run payroll. And you can also toggle on this detail view, which can be helpful if you're having a discussion also with a member of staff around how did we get to this number for this month or so, and then you really get the full details, right? So you can see on service sales, which were the service, and you get all that very specific level of detail. And if you wanted to share that as well, you can download this either as an Excel, so you get it in an Excel format, which is helpful if you want to be able to edit the data and do some other things from it. But you can also download it as a PDF, and let me just show you how that looks. While that loads, there we go. So what it does is it creates basically your total, and then you get, for each staff member, they get their own sheet basically with their details. And again, we just pulled for 1 week with some test data, so that there probably is going to be more data when you do this. But this can be really helpful as well. Then you can share that specific sheet as well with a member of staff if they have questions on how did we get to that commission and what was counted inside of that, etc., etc. So that just shows you the different formats. And I think that's probably enough for this session. I encourage you to just go in and just play with the reports in here. They are more straightforward. I think, from a finding insights for how you can grow, the retention report, appointments report that we went into detail, and trying to define the targets for how you want to measure that and track against that in your to your business. I think that's going to be important. I'm just going to switch into if there's any Q&A or any questions from this. Let me just stop sharing my screen. So I'll just pause for a minute as well if there's some other questions before we close out. So I see the clients have to come back to the same staff member in order to counter that. Yeah, I think we had something similar before. They don't. So as long as they, actually, maybe that was the one I already answered. No. So yeah, they just need to come back to any member of staff, and they will be counted as retained. So if not any other questions, I'll just thank you for the participation and all the questions. That is great. Being armed with more data helps us have better thoughts and insights about our business, drives better action, more accuracy in our action. So it's really important, and you have a lot of power available inside of Mangomint, as you can see here. I will be also, like, where we upload this recording on the Mangomint website, we will also be linking to like other resources in the Learning Center and so on that you can go where you can learn more about how you can use these reports. But I think that's it for me today, this week's feature spotlight. And as you know, we do this every week right now, so make sure you check out the feature spotlight webinar page at mangomint.com as well to stay tuned for other webinars that are coming up. I hope you found this session helpful and that you got some ideas out of this for data, how you can look at data differently in order to improve your business. And that's it for me today. So thanks a lot for joining, and I hope to see you back here again a different week. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye, Robin, Cassie.